Well, good morning, everybody, and again, happy Mother's Day. And it is a special day, and I hope you're going to be good to your moms today. I hope you're good to your moms all the time. But this is a time in our service. This is when we want to go to the Word of God. We want to find out some things about moms, about motherhood. And I want you to turn, if you would, in the Bible to Ephesians chapter 3:20 and also Proverbs 31. So Proverbs 31 in the Old Testament, Ephesians 3:20 in the New. And that'll appear on the screens. If you don't have your Bible or iPad or iPhone, you will be able to follow along on the screen. Again, welcome, Etowanda Gardens. Glad you're with us this morning. Let's give Etowanda a shout out, shall we? Should we just say, hey, Etowanda, so good to have you with us. We love you. Lone Hill, great to have you with us as well. Some of my favorite Mother's Day quotes. Napoleon Bonaparte said, the future destiny of a child is always in the hands of his mother. Abraham Lincoln actually said, all I am or ever hope to be, I owe to my mom. There's a Jewish proverb that says, God could not be everywhere, so he made mothers. And a Spanish proverb, which I really like, says that an ounce of motherhood or mother is worth a pound of clergy. But my absolute favorite comes from somebody, no name really, Emma Bombeck, who says, when your mother asks, do you want a piece of advice, it is a mere formality. It doesn't matter if you answer yes or no, you're going to get it anyway. And so that is motherhood. Now, this was a very special week for me, guys, and I want you really to focus here for a few minutes. I got to get through this quickly because I got to think about my mom every day while I was writing this message. So a little bit more each day. And I remembered the gift that really God gives in motherhood. And my mom, I know, was a special gift to me. As a matter of fact, I was a mama's boy from the day one, and I know that. And when people would call me that, it didn't bother me at all. I know who I am, and I made my peace with it. I love my mom. And most of you know that I lost my mom at a very young age. She was 61 years old, came out of nowhere, and it really had a devastating effect on my brothers. I have 3 brothers and myself. The best way I can describe my mom and save time is just tell you a quick little story. It was a Pee Wee baseball championship, okay? It's when we used to actually, as Pee Wees, little Pee Wees, have to hit the ball not off a tee, but it was actually thrown at us. And it was thrown by another guy that was our age. So you got 8 balls before you walked. 8 balls and 3 strikes. So you were up there quite a while, and you didn't know where the ball was going to go. But you stood up there kind of shaking a little bit, ready to swing the bat. Championship game, Tri-State Containers, that was the opposing team, and I played for a team called Yates Plumbing. And it was the final championship game now. We had the mayor there, small town, so everybody was there to see the game. And my mom was there, of course, with my father and my grandparents, and they were seated in those old lawn chairs on the grass watching the game. It was a very good game. You only go 7 innings in Pee Wee baseball. We scored a run in the top of the 7th, so it was 1-0. All I had to do was I was the pitcher, my brother Tony, younger brother, was the catcher. All I had to do was get 3 outs, and we were the city championship team. The first 2 outs came rather easily, but then unfortunately their best hitter walked up to the plate. Great drama here. His name was Mike Little, actually a good friend of mine. And I threw a couple of balls outside, high, whatever. Then I threw one right across the plate just by blind luck. And then he swung the bat by blind luck and parked it out to deep right field. Now, right field is where you put players who aren't any good because the ball never comes to right field in Pee Wee baseball. It doesn't even get to the outfield in Pee Wee baseball. And so the right fielder saw the ball, and he had never seen something like this before. He wasn't sure what to do with it. So he picked it up, and he doesn't know where to throw it because it's Pee Wee baseball. These kids are 5, 6, 7 years old. And so he just kind of does this and throws it. It ends up somewhere over in left field. And the left fielder, he picks it up and he thought, well, I can throw it in the general vicinity. He throws it and it lands at third base. Now, Mike Little's running the bases, and he's so happy. And remember, this is Pee Wee baseball. He's so happy that he's about to score the tying run and make it go into extra innings or maybe even win it by the next hitter who comes to the plate. He's so happy, but remember, he's a little guy. He forgets to touch home plate. He runs right from third base right into the dugout and starts celebrating. It is Pee Wee baseball. Now, there's pandemonium breaking loose. My mom saw this, though. And I guess she thought it was time for her to get involved. So she ran onto the field. Yeah, and she picked up the baseball, which she shouldn't have done, and she ran it over and put it into my glove, and she said, little Jeffrey, he didn't touch home plate, just go tag him in the dugout. So I did. I'm a good boy. I did what Mommy told me to do. I went over to the dugout where they were celebrating, and I tagged him. And some umpire that had some kind of death wish, I guess, said, you're out. And then both sides, pandemonium broke loose. Our coach has gotten a fight, and the other coach punched my coach in the nose. And then the fire truck came. It's a little town now. Fire truck came and the ambulance came. The mayor was there and he was trying to settle everybody down. And to prove how smart a mayor he really was, he decided to separate the teams and he gave both teams first place trophies. That's a smart player right there. Smart mayor. That's my mom. She just felt she had to get involved in everything. My mom was very passionate, very driven. But she also is a testimony to what Jesus could do, because my mom had an alcoholic, gambling father. And anytime my mom or her sister would ask for anything, the guilt would set in, because when you're a gambler, you spend all the money and you have nothing left to spend on your family. And what you do is you yell. So he would just yell at my mom and her sister. As years went by, we also discovered that my mom was sexually abused by her uncles. So this is a pretty bad situation here. As a result, my mom went through a lot of difficulties. Last week, we landed on a verse that I kind of want to keep going on, and it's in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. Now to him who's able to do immeasurably more than we could ever ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work in us, to him be the glory in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. There are so many stories in here of moms who have been able to do God has done amazing things through your life in difficult situations. Moms have a way of representing God really to us. I think it's a gift of God, motherhood, a gift of God, because mothers exemplify God to so much a degree. Sacrifice, love, unconditional love. The things that we see in God, we see in mom. But my mother, my story, is that God did immeasurably more in my mom's death than he ever did in her life. And it took us a while to see it. I was really close to my mom, and thinking about my mom this week, brings back tears. If you've lost your mom, you can just be doing anything and suddenly it hits you. And it does for years. They tell you that you get over it, but you never really do when you lose your mom. You are able to find a sustainability through your relationship with God, but let me tell you, it comes back from time to time when you least expect it, and you will cry. I had a reoccurring dream. And I still have that dream every once in a while. Here it is now. It's been since 2001, so it's been years now. And I will still have this dream where I'm on a park bench, and my mom is beside me. And I wake up usually from the dream in tears. And that's all that happens. It's just the fact that her presence is there in the dream, because I miss her so much. We were in New Zealand. I was with my family, and we were taking a vacation in Iwi Lakes. And I got a phone call on my cell phone. I must have been 35 at the time. And I knew by the prefix it was one of my brothers calling, and I was in a place of bad reception, so I drove out to the end of the road, and I returned the call, and my brother Jody said, "Hey, Jeff, you better come back to the U.S. You better get here quickly. Mom, something's happened, and we don't think she's going to make it." Now, this was a real surprise, because 61 years old, 61. My mom was a picture of health. Always. She was one of those moms out in the yard playing softball with us. She loved croquet. You know what croquet is? She loved croquet. And she really loved to smash other croquet balls. When you put your foot on, and she would just look at me and smile, and and she would just pound, and that ball would just go flying everywhere. And she was just so proud of her. She loved croquet. She was a competitor, and she didn't like to lose. And she was healthy. She stayed fit. She was as thin as a rail for most of her life. She watched what she ate. She exercised. She did all the things you should do. And I knew in my spirit when I got the phone call that this was it. I can't explain how, but I knew this was it. On the plane ride over, 13 hours coming back home to try to get there before my mom died, because as my aunt would explain to me later, my mom she suffered from a cardiac myopathy. Now, I looked that up and I tried my best to try to understand, but really it's just a technical term for I don't know what happened. A cardiac myopathy is not a heart attack. It's just where your heart just suddenly decides the batteries run out and it's time to stop beating. And so it's a very peaceful death. You just feel tired and you lay down to take a nap, only you never wake up. Because your heart, it doesn't stop all of a sudden, it stops slowly. Doom. And my mom passed away. When I got on that airplane and I started thinking about losing my mother, man, I started my battle with God. because I could think of a lot of people that should be taken out of this earth. And my mom wasn't one of them. I mean, if you knew my mom, man, with all the stuff that had happened in her life, she was able, through her relationship with Jesus, to forget it all and go minister to people who had the same problem. That was her whole life, to minister to people. The young girls in our city all knew Betty Vines. They all knew her name because she was not judgmental toward them. She just gave them grace and mercy and love and helped them. They loved her. They loved her. So I bargained with God a little bit. God, I don't think you're doing this real well. You're not thinking this through. And I could think of tons of people that you could take out rather than, how about Miss Stover, our next door neighbor? Man, she was a mean old woman. You read the book Stephen King, Children of the Corn. We had this cornfield. She owned the cornfield. And our wiffle ball, when I was playing wiffle ball with my brothers in the front yard, would sometimes go over to the cornfield. We were terrified that she would come out from behind one of those corn stalks with a machete because she was just mean. She poisoned our dog. We could never prove it, but we know. She was just mean. I said, take her out. Or how about our next door neighbor who every Friday night, he was addicted to drugs, would end up beating his wife and 2 small kids. And my dad would sit in our home with his auxiliary police baton just waiting for him to come over so that he could just punish him. In the name of Jesus, of course, but do some justice in the world. And how about Robert Mugabe, the president of Zimbabwe? How about taking him out? I started debating with God a little bit. We've all done this. God, why her? Come on now, 61. She's got so much good left in her life. I also learned on that airplane that it's possible for your life to be falling totally apart and the world just to go on around you as if nothing happened. Because I'm hurting and I'm sitting in that airplane seat just weeping and nobody seems to care. Now, of course, they didn't know what was going on, but that's how it feels to you. When I walked into the hospital, my brothers were all waiting, and I saw my mom hooked up to these ICU machines. When you see that, nothing can prepare you for it. Nothing. I'd never seen my mom like that before. And what really made it a little bit more pressurized was my 3 brothers. They saw me, and they kind of looked at me as if I could do something. I'm the pastor in the family. So, and when your mom's dying, you grasp for anything. And when I got down to pray for my mom, I felt like a little boy again. I don't know when you're around your mom, and I just begged. I started talking to her, and I said, please, Mommy, don't leave me. Please, Mommy, don't leave me. You said you would always be here for me. You said you would always be with me. Please don't leave me. And the nurses and the doctors are crying, watching me, the grown man, do this. And then my mom started crying as well. Now, she was in a coma, but evidently they think that she can hear you. And so whatever happened, she couldn't respond, but there were tears started coming down. I thought I was doing some good, so I kept praying, and I kept praying, and I kept bargaining with God. God, you can do this. I've read in the Bible where you can just wake someone up. It's like a little sleep. Would you please do something? And I begged, and I begged. I must have been there for a couple of hours just praying, and my brothers were pulling for me, and we were hoping God would do something. After a couple of hours, you just get weary. And went back into the emergency waiting room with my father, trying to comfort him. He was a very quiet man. He wasn't saying much at all, just going through this, and we were worried about him. About 3 a.m. in the morning, my aunt, who is a cardiac specialist, who explained everything happening, brought us back into the room and said, her heart is, I think it's called fibrillating again, and this is the end. And when my mom took her last breath, I did not know that it was possible to experience that much pain and still be alive. The pain it's hard to explain. And if you've never lost your mom, no matter what I say, it's not gonna clarify it for you. It's not. But if you've lost your mom, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like when your mom dies, it's like every happy moment in the past is gone with no hope of any future happy moments ever occurring again. It's like you've lost your home, your identity, your sense of belonging, and you're not ready for it because nobody talks to you about it. It was the most excruciating thing I've ever experienced. Deep, deep pain inside. And my battle with God continued that night. I was really mad at God now. And I really started to bargain with God. And I'm a pastor. We all do it. I've told you many, many times, we're all in this boat together. We're all trying to deal with things together. And I say, God, again, I don't think this is a good move on your part. This is a good woman who needs to remain behind. But then I got this thought. I thought, well, you do some of your best work at gravesides. So I got this great hope that when we went to the graveside service after the funeral, that God would do a miracle and everyone would see. And I started bargaining. I said, God, if you did this, think of all the people that would start to believe in you. Think of all my aunts and uncles that don't believe in you, but if you raise my mom from the dead, boom, I guarantee it, there's going to be some change, right? You're talking to God like we all do. So I'm walking with my brothers because you take the seat at the front row under the tent before they lower her into the grave. And I'm still bargaining with God. God, even now, you told Lazarus in John 11, you told Mary and Martha, even now if you believe, even now, well, even now I believe. Raise her up, Father. It would be fantastic for her just to sit up out of that coffin. That'd be fantastic. And then I sat down. The preacher started going through the words, and it dawned on me. He wasn't going to do that. Now, at this point, something really good happened because I had been talking to God. It's kind of like Job, and in those, I don't know, how many chapters, 64 chapters plus, or 20, 29 chapters. And finally, God spoke. Now, it wasn't audible, but if you've been a Christ follower long enough, you know that God puts thoughts and puts things into your mind. You know it comes from Him because it doesn't come from anywhere else. And God confronted me with my own presuppositions while I was seated right there in front of, as they were lowering the casket. And he kind of confronted me with my own arguments. The first thing he says, Jeff, you know your mom's not in that casket and hasn't been for days now. You know that. You also know that she's with me now, and if you could talk to her, she wouldn't want to come back. Man, he got me hard with that one. And then he said, by the way, if your philosophy is true, Jeff, that good people deserve good things, then if your mom was that good, doesn't she deserve her reward before others? Man, that kind of logic just came in, and I started thinking, wow, the pain I was feeling was for selfish reasons. I want my mommy. God was telling me, I know you do, but I've got her now. She belongs to me. And if you could talk to her, she wouldn't want to come back. You know how much that comforted me? I started smiling. My brothers asked me what was up. And I said, I'll tell you later, but I can tell you that I'm okay with this now. I'm okay. It was almost a relief to know that my mom didn't have to go through the pain and suffering in this world anymore, that God had called her heavenward. Now, I started to gain some healing in all of this. A few days later, after the graveside, my father was on the porch swing with me, and he said, son, and my dad didn't say a lot. He was real quiet, but he said, son, I want to ask you something. He said, I don't understand why God took your mother from me. And it was this word took that bothered me. As if somehow God just says, you know what, zap, you're dead. And over here, zap. I said, Dad, I don't think it works like that. Yes, God knows the numbers of your days. I know that. But we are all genetically defected. You know that, don't you? Do you know what we all have a disposition toward? Death. We're all going to die. And God knows the number of our days. There's a defect in all of us that we don't know yet, but we're going to find out one day. My mom happened to have a bad heart, part of the fall of man. Sin, sickness, disease, all part of the fall. If you don't believe it, just wait. Everybody dies, a part of the fall. Now, you can circumvent the whole process if you're an idiot by skateboarding on the 210. There's no cure for stupid, right? But primarily, God knows that number. And that's why I've said to you, my dad's family, I'm living on borrowed time already. None of my dad's brothers made it past 55. They all died of massive heart attacks. 55. And it's not good on my mother's side either. So enjoy me while I'm here. But remember I told you I went through my anxiety to lose my fear of death. Part of that was all part of it. Once you lose your fear of it, life is so much more peaceful. Once it's gone, you don't even think about that anymore. One day it's going to happen. I'm going to be with Jesus, so there you go. It's a very peaceful conclusion. So live your life, do what you can now. You have no guarantee of days tomorrow. But this is when everything started to change. About 5 years went by. I went back to New Zealand, struggled through the whole death of my mom, and I did struggle. And I came back to visit my dad a few years later, and my dad said, now stay with me. My dad said, come here, I want to show you something. He took me back in the back bedroom in this old chest. And he got this old-looking Bible out. It was tattered. It was about the oldest book. And he said, I want you to have this. And it was my mom's Bible that she had taken notes in all of her life going to church, same Bible. And I said, Dad, why didn't you give this to me years ago? He says, you know what? I got to tell you, I didn't know where it was. And I was digging through this old chest, and I found it. It was like gold to me. I sat down and I started going through it. Oh, this is going to be great. And I saw, little rose petals, how they used to do, put in the Bible, and Mother's Day cards, stuff that her kid. And then right in the middle was an old Charles Stanley In Touch magazine. My mom loved Charles Stanley. And in the back of that magazine, as well as on the back page of her Bible, in this part here, she had written down her 4 prayer requests that meant much to her, that she prayed through every day. Quickly, let me tell you what they were. Number 1, that my dad would learn about the unconditional love of God. Now, you have to understand something about my dad. My dad lived a very tough life. His father beat him with a shovel. His dad was an abuser. My dad was the youngest of 9 children. And my dad, since the time I knew my dad, he walked a little like this because he had been beaten so many times by his father. Now, my mom and dad come together in this marriage, and my mother comes from an alcoholic, gambling father. She has low self-esteem. She's very insecure, and now she's married to a man who suffered similar issues. What she needs to hear more than anything else is words of affirmation. She needs to hear, I love you, and what my dad has no idea of how to give is words of affirmation, I love you. Think about that as a recipe for disaster in marriage. So, it usually reveals itself about 7, 8, 9, 10 years into the marriage. And I could see my parents going this way. Even though they were Christ followers, fully committed to Him, they were going this way. And I remember how much respect I gained from my dad when my dad looked at my mom and said, you know what, we need to go to Christian counseling together. That was in a day when counseling wasn't popular and no real man went to Christian counseling. I remember just looking at my dad. Man, my dad, he's doing something that most dads would never do. And he went to Christian counseling and he learned how to tell my mother that he loved her. He just learned how to speak words of affirmation, and it saved the marriage of my parents. I saw him humble himself and do this because he loved my mom so much. But still, even though he had learned to do that, he still didn't know what it was to experience the unconditional love of God. How could he? Look at his father. He hadn't experienced that in life, and most of us don't realize, but our picture of God is just a glorified picture of our earthly dads. And that's why when we have a mess of an earthly dad, we have a hard time relating to God. And so my mom prayed for him that somehow, somewhere along the way, he would learn what it is to be loved unconditionally by God the Father. Then you go down the list, and the next thing, the second prayer was this, that my brother Tony would learn to forgive. She wrote that my son Tony would forgive me. Now, listen, you have to understand something about my mom. She wasn't perfect. There's no perfect mom. Let me give you another illustration of the imperfection of mom, in case you missed it. We were cleaning the church building. That's what we did, my family, to make a little extra money because we weren't very well off. Every Thursday, my mom would take us 4 boys and we would clean the church building that we attended, do the vacuuming, clean up everything in a way to make some extra money to supplement our income. And on one occasion, my mom warned us repeatedly. There was this mean neighborhood boy by the name of Butch. Sounds like he's a mean boy, doesn't it? And he rode this mini bike. Do you remember the old mini bikes? He rode a mini bike. And I think we've got a photo here of an old mini bike, unless you know, but this is an old mini bike. And they were for kids. Now you'd never get away with it because you'd get sued for even making such an instrument. But then we rode them when we were 8, 9 years old, and we didn't wear helmets. And my mother warned us, but my younger brother Jody, you know how the younger one gets away with everything? Everybody knows that. The youngest one gets away with everything. So he got away with everything. So we were working and he was out playing, and he was riding this motorcycle, and he came in the downstairs of the church building, and he said, and evidently he had been thrown off the bike on a hot summer day and landed on the asphalt. And he didn't have a helmet on. So he had no skin from here to here. It had all been rubbed off on the hot asphalt. And the bone of his chin was just sticking right out. I finally got to see what a chin bone looked like because all the skin was rubbed off. And he comes in because he's still numb, kind of in shock, and he says, Jeff, am I okay? I said, sure, you're fine, man. We probably need to take you to Uncle Ted. Our Uncle Ted was a pediatrician, a doctor. Let's take you down to Uncle Ted and get you cleaned up, but you'll be fine. And I covered him with a towel. So I put him in the nursery so he couldn't see there were no mirrors in there. I went upstairs and I had to tell my mom, and I had quite a task. And I said, Mom, I got to tell you something. Why aren't you downstairs doing your job, Mom? I got to tell you something, but I want you to remain calm. She goes, what? And I said, look, Jody's been hurt. What? And I said, Mom, I need you to be calm. I need you to go around and get the Chevy Impala. Remember those old Chevy Impalas? I need you to pull it around, and I'll bring Jody out, and we'll take him to the doctor. He's going to be fine, but I need you to remain calm. She goes, okay. And she drove the car around. She saw Jody, took one look at him, and said, oh my God, he's going to die. And as soon as she said that, whoosh, whoosh, the blood just starts pouring out because he gets nervous. He believes his mother. She drove that Chevy Impala on the medium downtown to get to the emergency room, get to the doctor. She's going in and out between the meters. She's knocking things down. She doesn't care. That's my mom. She's passionate. She's driven. That's Mom. Crazy woman. Because of what she had experienced with her father, she had some insecurity issues that she always had to deal with. She was doing fine until Tony came along. Tony was the one boy out of the four that, I'm sorry, he was different. He lived on peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwiches. Who lives on peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwiches? His body type was very different than the rest of the Vines boys. He tended to just carry a lot of excess weight. And his face was an acne convention. It was. Now, you grow out of that, but when he was younger, and when my mom would look at him, she would be reminded of her own childhood. She didn't even realize she was doing it, but she would say things that would really hurt him. She would say things like, why don't you eat healthier? Why can't you be more like your brothers? Why can't you do better in school? Why can't you comb your hair? Why can't you take a bath? Why can't you eat the food that everybody else eats? Why? And it was this all the time. And she didn't even realize that she was continuing the cycle that she had hated so much in her own dad, because it was a blind spot for her. She was a good Christian woman, believe me, but she had this blind spot. She discovered it when she started going to counseling with my dad. The counselor helped her discover what she had done to my younger brother. When she discovered it, man, she was devastated. She started begging my brother, who was about 19 or 20 at this time now. She started begging him for forgiveness. And when my brother Tony realized that my mom realized what she had done, he wanted to make her pay. Oh, he did. So the more she sought his forgiveness, the more he refused to give it. Because he felt like if he could just get his revenge on his mother, that somehow the healing would come, but it didn't come. The wound just kept getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And of course, when your mother treats you this way, you don't love yourself, so it's hard for anybody else to love you. So he had one failed marriage after another failed marriage. And my mom, when she thought through all of this, was simply devastated. And she prayed, she had this prayer in her Bible that my son Tony would forgive me. When Mom died, by the way, I looked around when she breathed her last breath, and everyone was there except Tony. I couldn't find him. And it was like 3 a.m. in the morning, so I start going through the hospital corridors to find him. It's dark through everywhere. And I find him rolled up, balled up in a little corner. And I said, Tony, what are you doing? He goes, my mommy's dead. My mommy's dead. In one event, the cost of unforgiveness was a price too high to pay, and he couldn't deal with it. Third, quickly, that her sons would love each other. Now, that Dean, my husband, our father, that Dean would know the unconditional love of God, that my son Tony would forgive me, and then that my sons would love each other again. Now, you know how it goes. We did love each other, and we tried to kill each other when we were younger, but we did so in love. But you know how it is, that families grow apart, and we were starting to grow apart because you start to have kids and everyone's a parental expert, so you're telling each other how to raise your kids, so that causes, and then you start talking about politics around the dinner table, and then you bring religion into it. Next thing you know, everybody hates each other. You don't really hate each other, but it appears to your mother. And I remember coming home from college one weekend, and my mom was crying. I said, what's wrong? She goes, I just want you kids to love each other. And she had tried so hard to keep peace and unity in the family. She would work, I was amazed at how many hours she would work and still do Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas dinner and Sunday lunch to try to get us all together to keep talking, because she felt like if I could just keep you together for good food, because she was one good cook, man. If I could just keep you coming to the house for food, then I know that sooner or later you're all going to grow up and you're going to realize how petty your arguments really are, and you'll love each other again. And that was her prayer in her devotional. And then finally, last, and this is the one that hit me the hardest. I was kind of glad that I made it into the prayer list, but not like this. That God would do whatever he needs to do. Have you ever heard me say that? You get things from Mom. That God would do whatever he needs to do to help Jeff love people. Man, I put that down, and I just started shaking, quivering. Wow. And I thought about a time she had confronted me at a family picnic when she came and said, Jeff, son, she put her arm around, I love you. And she said, God's really gifted you, but you're never going to be the man that God wants you to be until you learn to love people as much as you love study. And man, I heard that. And first of all, you weep because I felt I disappointed my mom. But then I began to weep because she was praying every day for me. I look back on my life now, and part of me wants to say, thanks, Mom. Because God answered that prayer, and the way he did was painful. I just sat there thinking about all these things. It had been years later since the death of my mom, and I remember the argument that I had with my mom. If you have time sometime, look at all those things in Proverbs 31. I can't do it now, but look at all those things in Proverbs 31 that a mom's supposed to be, or a wife of noble character. Just read through the list. It's amazing. And if you read through the list, you'll discover that they're supposed to be things like a philanthropist, a transporter of goods, a person who needs little sleep, an entrepreneur, a gymnast, an accountant, a seamstress, above reproach. I mean, it's an endless list. And all the time of questioning and going through this thing with God, how my mom could be taken. When I sat down to read her Bible and her devotional, it dawned on me that God had answered the prayers of my mom through her death. I was talking to my dad a few months after I'd read her devotional. We were on the front porch swing again. My militaristic dad, my hard-nosed dad, it is what it is, black and white dad. We were on the porch swing. He looks over at me and he says, Jeff, I don't think I would have ever learned about the love and grace and mercy of God and how he can take you through such a difficult circumstance had your mother not passed away. I looked over at my dad. I thought, where's my dad? Who are you and what have you done with him? What? And he grabbed me by the hand. My dad, my tough dad, grabs my hand, holds my hand, and looks me right in the eyes and says, hey, Jeff, I want you to know I love you. Man, the healing that came into my life when hearing my dad say that, I mean, I guess I knew it, but he was a tough dude. He never really said it. But now to look me in the eye and say that, it dawned on me. I started to smile because I realized, man, God, you got him. What mom could never accomplish in life, she accomplished in her death. Dad ran to God, and he met a father who would give him an unconditional love that he had never known before. And my dad, the next 25 years of his life until he died, was a totally different man. Spent most of his time visiting sick and shut in with his church, visiting people who couldn't get outside just to love them. That's what he wanted to do more than anything else. My brother Tony, at Mom's funeral, made a huge montage of Mom's life, gathered all the photos and the pictures, and somehow in the course of this made his peace with everything. You say, well, yeah, but his mom had to die for it to happen. Well, look, I'll let you take that up with God. I can only tell you this. Mom's prayer was that Tony would forgive her, and boy, did he ever. His third wife worked because he had forgiven himself, forgiven his mom. I said it's hard to hug a porcupine. He wasn't a porcupine anymore. He was lovable. Because of the forgiveness, the wound had been closed, and now he's married, been happily married. This marriage, you can tell it's going to work because he's a different man. Forgiveness changes you. It changes you. It allows you to love yourself, and so because you love yourself, others can love you as well. His first two wives had no chance. It wasn't their fault. They had no chance. Man, when you're married to somebody who hates himself and everybody and wants revenge on the world, good luck. But once forgive, see what your husband or your wife needs is Christ. And only Christ can give that to you, can take a disadvantage, turn it into an advantage, and use it for the glory of God. That's exactly what happened. And if you would have talked to my brother Tony today, he'd say, oh, in heaven's name, forgive your mom. Forgive her. Don't bring judgment on yourself by continuing the cycle. A verse he likes to read is Matthew 7, don't judge or you too will be judged, for in the same way you judge others, you'll be judged. And with the measure you use, it'll be measured to you. He would tell you, be careful about judging your mother. Remember that there's some things that happened in her life that made her who she is. Forgive her. That her children would love each other. Boy, did we ever. When Mom died, man, we came together because we knew how afraid she was that the family would break apart, and usually they do. When Mom dies, the glue that holds the family together does, but we were all smart enough to know that, so we purposefully came together. And man, everything changed. We just agreed, no more politics at the table, no more religion at the table, we're just going to be brothers. And we did, and we've kept that true now ever since her death. And when we get together now, we talk about things we have in common. We love each other. We still talk about our faith, but we don't get down in denominational arguments. We just talk about Jesus. We leave it right there. Now, every once in a while, we'll get weak, and one of us will throw in a sarcastic comment, because it happens. But we just smack whoever that is and move on. And then finally, her last prayer. Wow. I said again, there's part of me wants to say, wow, thanks, Mom. Because she gave God permission to do whatever he needed to do, that I would love people. And it dawned on me that pastors, we are notorious for using people as a means to our end. But in order to really love people, you're going to have to suffer. Because you cannot help someone in suffering until you've walked that journey. And most of you who know me know this is just not some fake aid. You know that when I went through the mental illness, how my heart changed for people. You know that. When my mom died, my heart changed for people who've lost a mom or dad. You know that. So every time I go through some suffering or tough issue, I just want to say to Mom, thanks a lot, Mom. Even in her death, she accomplished so much by asking God to mold and shape her son. Here's what I want to leave you with then. Two simple things. Your mom was not perfect. There's no way she could have been, because she's human. You weren't the perfect child. Give her a break. Forgive her. She's been in the ministry of reconciliation most of her life, trying to keep the family together, trying to keep her husband happy, trying to keep you happy. It's a relentless job. Forgive her. Whatever it is that she did that wounded you, understand that much of that came from her mom and dad, and she did not know how to handle it. And she's continuing the cycle that even a good Christian woman can continue with, because there are so many blinders in our lives. Forgive her. Now, I hate that I have to say this, but in our today's world, I have to. I have to give you a disclaimer. There are some cases where you can't totally reconcile with your mom. If you were sexually abused by your parents, forgive them, but I'm not advising you to reconcile, especially if that person hasn't overcome this addiction. For the sake of your own children, you may not be able to invite your mom back in. You understand? But man, if you had a mom that she had some issues, maybe she talked too much, maybe she put her nose where it doesn't belong, but ultimately, she gave you what you needed. She raised you. She had her mistakes. She made her mistakes. Man, my goodness, thank God from the mountaintops that at least you had a mom who put shoes on your feet, clothes on your back, gave you food, gave you a house. Yeah, she wasn't perfect, but man, you're here. You're alive. Thank God for all the good that she brought into you. Now here's the second thing, and this is important. Your mom is going to die one day. Fact of life. If you wait until it's too late to sit her down and say, Mom, I've never told you this, but I need to tell you something. I love you, and I realize you did the best you could with us. And I don't want to talk about anything, issues we have. I just want you to know right here and now that I love you, that I'm grateful, and I value you, and I always will. If you wait too late, then you're going to have to go through what I did. She's going to die, and you're going to regret every day of your life that you never did it. Every day of your life, you're going to regret it. Every day, you're going to die a little bit because of that. But if you'll do it now, then yes, your mom will die, and yes, it will be painful, but not as painful not as painful if you have told your mom what you really think about her face to face. Do it. And it will heal 1,000 wounds in your own life as well as hers. You say, but Pastor Jeff, you don't understand. If I go tell her, look, do not write your mom a card that says, I forgive you, Mom. Happy Mother's Day. You understand why you wouldn't do that, right? Forgive me for what? What did I do? No. You forgive her, but that's in your own head. In your own hand, you've forgiven. But you do speak verbally to her and tell her that you love her, that you're grateful. And if you will do that, it will bring so much healing in both your lives. You know, when my mom went home to be with the Lord, I lost so much. And it took years later to realize that the thing that I thought was the absolute worst event of my life has proven to be the training ground for me, the forgiveness foundation for my brother, the event that triggered my dad to get to know the unconditional love of God, and the thing that brought all of us boys back together. And I'm just reminded that He is indeed able to do immeasurably more than we could ever hope for, ask for, or imagine, if you'll just trust Him. Happy Mother's Day, moms. What would we do without you? Father, I thank you for moms, for your grace and your mercy. I thank you for the way that you worked in my own family's life. I still miss my mom. I love my mom. But I know that because she's with you, Jesus, she's in good hands. And that one day we will be reunited. Thank you for the gift of motherhood, to nurture and to comfort. And I pray for anyone in this room who just can't relate to any part of this message because, Pastor Jeff, they say you got no idea. The relationship I had with my mom, you just have no idea. I pray that you would help them to forgive and move on with their lives and to find some positive, some goodness, and then perhaps writing that to their mom, bringing healing, maybe even restoration, maybe even a changed life when a mom hears from a son or daughter that they are loved. I pray this in Christ's name. Amen.